Welcome to our podcast today. Champions are built. We got a special guest today, Aaron. This is the brand, Eric Johnson.
And this is the source, Aaron Thigpen. Guys, really got a great guest for you guys today. I'm glad we were able to get this gentleman on. I've known him for, probably about 20 years. I've known him almost since the infancy of my business. And he's a really great resource, definitely in the softball industry. And I just would have this guy on because he has a lot to offer. He's been very influential in the softball community. And I just think some of these guys who I'm going to talk about have done a lot that have shaped their sport and don't always get the recognition that they deserve. And I think that I would do this with him to give him a voice and for some of you guys to learn about this guy, because some of the things that you're doing out there in softball are probably a direct result of his contributions to the sport. And without further ado, that gentleman is Rich Balswick. He's a National Open Division MVP award winner and three-time All-American fast pitch pitcher. He participated in 3 Olympic sports festivals, which are near and dear to my heart. I also participated in those. So our careers overlap as athletes and competitors. He's also a member of 3 national championship teams. For 30 years, Rich has been a full-time pitching instructor. He's trained hundreds of college pitchers. He's had the National Gatorade Player of the Year and 2 state Gatorade Players of the Year. And I can't say anything more about this guy because when you've had this much success this long in the sport, we'd still be working on his contribution for the next 10, 15 minutes, and I don't even know them all. But without further ado, welcome Rich Balswick.
All right.
Well, nice to be here. And my memory is so vivid of when I first met you and seeing you do what you did. I'm still, in my own mind, I have a background of being a coach myself. I was trained to be a high school teacher, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the areas that I personally felt very limited about and as a coach is I just felt like I could never make people faster than they are. And I eventually had some students go to Aaron for training and pitching and so forth. And it just blew my mind how good he was at helping people get quicker. I never knew that was going to be possible. And I'll never forget that. And I can still see the girl in my mind that seemed so awkward. She had trouble walking, and yet Aaron helped her get faster and even taught her how to turn left, I think, to around first base.
Yeah. Well, me and Rich have shared a lot of great softball pitchers over the years. Hannah Grauer comes to mind. There's been quite a few over the years. What I like about Rich is that he understands the value of athleticism as it pertains to softball pitching and how there is some parallel, not necessarily the movements, but the energy systems and the type of explosiveness and athletic attributes and qualities you need to be a successful sprinter or to be fast, but also to be an explosive and successful pitcher. To get this started, Rich, kind of just a general opening. What are your thoughts on the current state of softball, travel softball? Again, you're working with young ladies and their development, and maybe give us your just initial thoughts, good, bad, otherwise. Maybe give us an idea of what you've seen in the past, the evolution, and where you think the sport might be going.
Well, the first thing that I'm impressed with when you ask that question is that I feel like the game, as far as pitching is concerned, I feel like there's an overemphasis in just developing more speed. And when I think of the skill of becoming what it really means to be a pitcher, it involves, yes, speed, but it involves also the kind of movement that we create on the ball with proper spin. And then, of course, being able to spot the ball and have the ability to be consistent. And so what I see today, and I'm really, in a way, kind of in a quandary in the way I'm coaching, from the standpoint that I've been such a strong believer in getting kids to move the ball. And so when you name some of these name some of these names, the reason why these kids were able to be competitive and outstanding, even at the open, at the college level, at the top level of the collegiate World Series and so forth, they got people out because of movement. And in today's world, I mean, I actually saw a score here a couple of years ago in the finals of a women's national tournament where 16 runs was scored, and the pitcher on the losing team was throwing the ball, and I think they went through 3 different pitchers, and they were all throwing in the high 60s and couldn't get anybody out. And it actually looked like batting practice. I mean, it really did. I mean, you couldn't put a ball on a batting tee and get more consistent, velocity off the bat. Yeah. And so I see that still going on today. And it's, pitchers are throwing the ball up in the zone hard and straight. And if they throw it hard enough, they're able to get outs. And in my mind, the game needs more balance. I could say more in that area, but I'd probably start boring everybody. But there needs to be balance in the element of being a pitcher and being unpredictable with how hard you throw the ball, how you spot it, how you move it, whether it's a true rise ball or a bullet spin or truly a drop. Pitches are being called curveballs that are nothing more but angle pitches going slightly off the plate and things like that. So there's a lot of blindness from my perspective. People don't realize that I'm God myself, see? So,
yeah. It's so funny. There's a common thread, it seems, as though with all of us that have started, in this sort of business 20, 30 years ago. And we all seem to lay our cards on the side of the art of sport versus just the science and the metrics of it, because it sounds like softball has been bit by the same bug that baseball has been bit by, and EJ can speak to this, and that's chasing velocity. I guess maybe, I don't know if that's because everyone needs to quantify performance, because that's one of the parameters for being recruited. And that's an easy statistic to measure and pull out, or if it's something else. And so it seems like the nuances of pitching or hitting and some of the other things that are involved in baseball and softball have kind of fallen by the wayside. And maybe younger coaches just don't maybe either understand or have some respect or reverence for maybe the art side of it, because maybe they've grown up with the statistics and the metrics being the core of what they need to be focused on. Maybe you can.
Yeah. Aaron, you can have said any better. Rich, it's kind of crazy. It's been a weird phenomenon thing going on the last probably five years about speed, and everybody throwing up in the zone is no different in baseball than in softball. Mm-hmm. And the swings are being taught analytically. If you get this spin rate and you hit the ball at this launch angle, and I think they're at a massive advantage. I do, because they're teaching, hey, swing on an upward plane, and next thing you know, you elevate the ball. The hitters have trouble catching up to it. So I think it's full circle. Softball, baseball, in terms of pitching and hitting, have gone in the same direction. And I don't know if that's so good for the game a lot. You said something earlier that really just resonated with me, and that was the movement of the ball as a pitcher. We find less pitchers in baseball able to throw to the corners, able to elevate the ball, sink the ball, curve the ball. It's just all straight over the top, straight balls, and they're throwing hard, but they're getting hit, like you said in the game that you watched. Those players throwing it up on a tee. So it's interesting. And how much difference have you seen in the past 5 years with just analytics taking over the art of the game?
Well, you're hitting the nail on the head there's equipment being sold, and I probably shouldn't name names, but there's equipment being sold that's measuring differentiation in pitches and movement and things like that. And from what I understand, there are literally coaches at the college level recruiting on the statistics, the numbers, the measurement that the machine shows. And I look at that, I look at the numbers and so forth, and it's too cumbersome to me. I can tell by looking at a ball whether it's being pitched efficiently. I don't need a machine to show it to me.
Right.
And I literally had a girl at a major college create a differentiation that the guy running this particular equipment, he had never seen that kind of differentiation because of how much the ball was rising in comparison to her drop. And you know this, AJ, from baseball, if you have a pitcher that can be dominant up and down and change speeds, that hitter has a difficult time getting their hands above the ball and getting contact, especially when they've spent their whole life lifting this elbow and they're trying to hit this way. Now they're trying to hit this way. And it doesn't seem like, when I watch girls, they're doing this all the time. They got that same swing. The pitchers are throwing the ball up in the zone. They can't get up on top of it. And there's just a blindness there that just drives me crazy.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I was having a conversation with a local softball coach, Robert Johnson, and he sends his girls to Kiko Garcia. And we both know Kiko. We all were actually working out of the same facility many moons ago. And I work with a lot of Kiko's hitters as well. And Kiko has a particular hitting style that addresses that, because
he sure does.
Saying that, hey, he could go to a tournament and he would see, 12 out of 14 hitters all miss balls high because they didn't have the swing. They didn't have the shoulder strength. They didn't have the capability to hit a ball high, in the strike zone. And so he said, what Kiko does is he just teaches them how to hit that high ball because they know it's coming. And that's true, because when Kiko sends me a young lady, he'll say, hey, Aaron, I already know it now because I've been working with them for 20-something odd years. Hey, Aaron, I want you to develop this sort of upper body strength in this young lady so she can put the bat on this plane, because he knows they're going to be successful, because he knows in most cases that's where the ball is going.
Yeah. See, one of the things that, EJ, you have something to jump in on?
No, go ahead and keep on going, Rich. It's good talk.
Well, the thing that I'm reminded of here today quite a bit is that when I think of myself as a coach, I really look at it as a bigger subject than just trying to help somebody improve. I really believe that my calling when I'm working with somebody, if they're committed to excellence, there's a way in which I want them to understand that we're really moving in a direction that I call transformation. Because the natural person, if I put a ball in somebody's hand, the natural inclination when this ball is in your hand and you're going to throw it underhand is to make effort forward to make the ball go that way. And to me, when I'm creating what I would call transformation, I'm teaching kids how to learn to let it go rather than make it go. And that foundation, as you guys know, whether you're hitting a ball, a baseball, or swinging a golf club, if there isn't an element of understanding of relaxation, and one of the most eye-opening experiences to me happened in running with a classmate of mine when I was at San Francisco State years ago. And he said, Rich, let me help you a little bit with how to run. Nobody had ever taught me how to run. I always thought of running as being some kind of a pulling action, and so forth. And he said, we're running. And he's talking to me. He says, Rich, just let yourself fall forward a little bit and relax. And in a sense, just try to catch up with yourself.
That's right. Body knows how to run.
Pretty soon, he couldn't keep up with me. And he was always faster than me. And it was something because I learned something about how to let it happen.
Yes.
You know, and I understand that same thing in golf. When you
Yes.
get up at the top of that swing, you gotta relax in that transition and let that club drop and fall on that backside. And by the time I get to the third hole, I'm grabbing it and I'm slugging and I'm going, you know, no wonder my kids have trouble learning how to let the ball go. They don't know how to relax. And hitters are the same way. They're trying to force the bat head into the hitting area, and they don't understand why they can't hit the ball. Yeah. That same principle holds true like crazy. And I could talk for a long time on that.
Well, let me ask you this, Rich, and this is kind of interesting. Do you find athletes today having the problem of letting go and relaxing versus athletes 10 years ago, where I think, 10, 20 years ago, athletes would just let it go, not force it? It's more forced, actions now I see out of just in general, not, I mean, the great athletes we teach, they have a tendency, they understand that they can relax. But if we're just talking about, hey, everyone else, when you throw them in a pool, I find that athletes have a really difficult time relaxing and letting it go. Are you seeing that same thing?
Well, it's hard to relax when somebody keeps telling you to throw it faster. And so I'm asking my students, ask them what you want me to do to make the ball go faster. Well, it's all centered around trying to throw the shoulder harder and make your hand go forward faster and so forth like that. And it's false information because the harder they try, the more they tighten up the wrong muscles at the wrong time and reduce efficiency. And so, so you're trying to teach kids drills that help them learn to relax. They're so used to grabbing and forcing something to swing somebody's arm up in the air and just let it fall on the backside. They can't relate to that as a way of eventually creating more power. I don't blame them in a way, but when there's a gun to your head that 3 days after you do the lesson, they've got to pitch in a game, you're forced to compromise to some degree yourself, it seems like, as a coach, because they have this short window to try to prepare for a game. And some of these kids need to be not competing for 3 to 6 months so they can learn their skill.
And that's why I always connected with you, because basically everything you just said applies to sprinting and track and field. I mean, to a T. All you have to do is replace softball or pitching with sprinting, and it's the exact same thing.
Same principle. Yeah.
Well, this is, I guess, this search or this mad dash to be recruited, or a mad dash to, like, I have to be here because somebody needs to watch me and I need you to fix me now. And even though you may fix them for a short term, people there's longevity in this, and you really have to hone your craft. And it seems like athletes may not be as patient as they once were years ago, just because of recruiting. How much has recruiting changed what you've done and how you do stuff in this day and age, Rich?
Well, I know this. I know from my own experience in teaching kids to spin the rise ball, I'm quite aware that when you actually cut underneath the ball isn't going to go as fast when you're creating an axis of spin where the forces are going more underneath and rather than through the ball. And so I'm getting to the point where I'm telling kids, when you're on these showcase tournaments and so forth, you could strike out 18 batters in a row throwing a rise ball 55 miles an hour and nobody's squaring up to, and the coach won't even stay there and watch the results of your pitches because they've got a speed gun in their hand of some type, and you're throwing 55 and they're looking for 65. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm betraying my own students. I'm teaching them how to be a pitcher, and this guy's looking for throwers.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm starting to betray some of these kids. And it's crazy. It really is. I feel like I'm between a rock and a hard place because I feel like I know how to teach kids to pitch. And and that's a subject in itself. What does it mean to be a pitcher instead of a thrower? I think of a guy that pitched for Oakland some years ago that, was throwing a ball 100 miles an hour in his day. And he was bad in practice because he didn't know how to do anything else. And to me, it's an example of the way girls' fast pitch is being played today sometimes. It's just hard and straight and up in the zone. And when hitters get the timing, boom, they're killing it. So I don't know where that takes us at this point, but
yeah, I call it the art of the game, and Aaron and I talk about this a lot. The art of teaching is being maybe changed a little bit in this industry, but I'm going to tell you something that's coming back in baseball is the art is coming back. There are more people that understanding that there is worth in the art. There is teaching players how to throw the ball in different places and to move the ball in different places, because that's getting outs. And at the end of the day, the best pitch in baseball or softball is an out, regardless of how it's made. And I think that's real interesting. I think it's coming back, though. Rich, I really believe this way of thinking that we've done over these 30 years or so is coming back. Art is going to come back to both sports.
Yeah. Well, it really needs to. One of the most interesting books that I ever read, I don't know if you guys have ever seen this, a book called The Talent Code.
Yes, I read that.
It's a tremendous book. And, underneath that name, it says, greatness isn't born, it's grown. Mm-hmm. And as if you've read that book, it talks about myelin, the coding of the nerves and so forth, and how with proper teaching, deep learning and things like that, deep practice, of course, is a term that's used. And, when we're talking about the lack of patience of kids and things like that, I mean, the lack of patience is also, of course, there in coaches too. But kids don't seem to understand that when they are practicing something, it isn't just to throw the ball to the other direction. There's a specific purpose that you have in mind when you're throwing that particular pitch. You're focusing on developing an awareness of what kind of spin the ball is being created. 99 and 9/10% of the kids that come to me for lessons don't know when the ball is in the air what it's supposed to look like. And in my mind, if I'm teaching somebody how to throw a ball and the axis needs to be straight across, there's a certain look that ball has as the ball's going away from me that indicates that I'm spinning something with efficiency that's going to maximize the level of the pitch as it approaches home plate. And you can tell, I've been seeing some stuff with, Greg Maddux in recent days that, and some of the old videos of him, in his day, and how, he had the ability to make the ball so consistently move that the hitter's knees were always buckling and couldn't get squared up to anything that he was throwing, and he's throwing in the low 90s, and he was having just as much success as he got older because people couldn't square up to what he was doing. And so pitching, as you know, involves so much more than just a rival, the dead velocity going straight in there. And that's what we're trying to develop, I'm sure.
Well, let's put it Aaron, he made my knees buckle too, Maddox. So leave it at that.
He was one of my favorites with the Braves.
He was one of my favorites.
And I don't even know if he threw a lot in the 90s. I think he threw a lot of his pitches in the 80s.
Oh, sure he was.
Yeah.
He was in the 80s a lot, especially his last few years. I forgot what I was going to say. I know it was brilliant, but I forgot.
I'm sorry to cut you off. I hope it comes back to you. And because you segue in kind of into my next question, which would be, now what would be your suggestions for a development path for a parent who has an 8-year-old and says, hey, my daughter wants to play softball? Because a lot of our parents are watching this, and I'd like for them to maybe get an idea of, hey, what should I be looking for in a coach and an instructor, and what maybe they should be teaching, and what are those building blocks that you'd like to see an athlete progress through?
Well, here's the real challenge in that particular area. Somebody's 8 years old, and the coach, even at that level, they for some reason are worrying about winning and losing games. And so they're totally preoccupied with teaching somebody to get the ball over the plate with as much velocity as possible. So right from the get-go, there's pressure on that 8-year-old have game type performance, when the ideal thing would be for them, to have weeks and months before they start playing games where they can just play catch and have some fun and this and that. I feel like an 8-year-old is old enough to learn very, very well. But when you mix it immediately with competition, where if they throw 4 balls in a row, or they walk 2 batters, they're taken out of the game, or this, or whatever. And instead of being taught how to pitch, they're taught how to throw. Mm-hmm. And so I spend most of my time with kids, whether they're 8, 12, or 16, unlearning, trying to help them unlearn what they've been doing. So in a way, I don't know how to answer that question, because I've gone to local leagues and try to get them to understand the principles, learning to just relax and just let the arm come through here and get this whip action and get the lag. And it's a grab and a push in some form that's always dominant. And parents that I'm coaching have all kinds of social pressure. What is your daughter doing? She's not closing her hips enough. She's not rotating her shoulder enough. She's leaving too much on the table here.
Yeah.
And so it's a very challenging thing. And the part where I'm challenged is that and I've started in this direction with a few guys. I feel like somehow or another we need some type of association of pitchers that has enough credibility that we could start influencing some of the stuff that you see on YouTube, every day. Just most of it is, I hate to come across this way, but about 85% of it is cancer. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't serve any purpose in the long run. Now, again, there are exceptional pitchers, as you guys know, that can come out of everything that we think of as being inefficient and wrong, and yet they can run faster and they can hit the ball farther or whatever than everybody else. And so now that coach is credible because of that athlete that has somehow blossomed in their hands. It had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, they succeed despite the the environment that they've been put in. And we've talked about that a lot, but I think that success happens for very few. Most of the rest of us mere mortals hit the ceiling. They hit a wall. And now we see those athletes at 16, 17 trying to, like you said, you use the term that we use all the time, is unlearn all of those bad things at 16, 17 that have been ingrained since age 8 and 9. And it's even more pressure on them because now they're trying to get a scholarship.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
When you say scholarship, it reminds me of another trend. I was talking about everything being velocity, velocity, velocity. The other thing that's going on in my mind is that everything is money, money, money. It's all about using people. I mean, there's obviously a percentage of people out there that are doing awesome jobs, that are well balanced and so forth, and really have the kids in mind. But there's a percentage of people out there that milk this thing so much for money that there's a percentage of kids that no longer can participate. They just can't afford. They just can't afford it. Mm-hmm. And it continues to be more expensive every year. And I just don't. And then that's another thing. They're manipulated to play on some of these various travel ball teams. You come and join us and we'll go to this showcase, and there'll be a zillion coaches sitting up on the stands, and they spend thousands of dollars to travel a couple of thousand miles to go to a showcase. I heard of somebody just this last week that went way out of state. The family spent $4,000 and their daughter didn't even get a chance to pitch. I mean, those types of things are going on all over the place. So how do you balance that? So as a parent listening to something like this, I'm convinced that one of the things that parents need is some type of navigational source or counsel where they can be taught to ask the right questions and this and that, and recognize that there's no pressure for a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old to be at the very top of their game. Let them go out there and play and have some fun. You know, I mean, the college coach can't even talk to you personally until you're, September of your junior year in high school. So stop buying into this thing that, I have kids that are, trying to pitch and they're trying to play on an A level when they should be playing on a B level so they can have the ball in their hand all the time. And it's all about elevating and playing in an older age group and this and that or whatever. And it just gets totally out of balance. And so people need input from old geezers like me. I don't think you guys are old enough to be considered old geezers.
Oh, thank you. I think there's enough baldness and gray on the screen to say otherwise.
Oh, I think those are great points. And I hope the parents out there listening just hear that and that resonates with them. And Aaron, what resonates with me is that management piece that you and I always talk about, that counsel piece that Rich just mentioned, is that a lot of people don't really know. They don't know the information. And parents need to ask questions and need to be inquisitive about, when should I go or what should I be doing? And it's so much what I call stands talk up in the stands. And they say, well, you got to be doing this. If you don't do this, you're missing out. Well, Rich, you said something really important, that you can't be recruited till really August 1st, September 1st of your junior year. And that just, such great advice, Rich, to give parents, that stop chasing something that is not there yet. And you don't have to be great right now. Give yourself time to develop. And boy, that resonates with me a lot. So that was a great point you made right there.
Navigational skills are really important. I'm thinking of something I just happened to stumble into just last night. I'm talking to a girl who is more marginal in terms of talent and so forth. And at the last minute, instead of going to a D3 school, et cetera, she ended up applying to a top, top Division I school in recent days. And got accepted. Well, she's aware that she doesn't really have the ability right now to compete and play at that particular level. But she's still interested in playing. Well, I happen to have history with the coach and a former pitcher at that particular college. And I told this young lady last night, all excited about the college that she's going to go to, but still would like to play. I said, let me go to bat for you. The coach knows who I am. And I'm going to call the pitcher that recently pitched for him. And in fact, I'm scheduled to talk to her this afternoon because she responded to my request. And let's plan out some kind of a strategy to create a walk-on scenario, because they don't need the money. She just wants to play. And she's good enough in my eyes that she could eventually contribute to a D1 school, but she just needs to be in the right environment. And I'm not gonna tell the coach that this gal can walk on water and nobody in the United States saw her talent. I just know that she's good enough and has the personality that she could fit in and she could play on my team anytime. And so I just want to try to help that young lady navigate in a direction. And she never ever got encouragement from me to go try to get hooked onto a D1 school. because I try to be realistic when kids get a little bit older in terms of what they're aiming for. I love dreams when kids are 10, 12, 14 years old. But when you're 17, you've got to smell the roses a little bit
Yeah.
and really know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I call this particular pitcher. She's all excited about having a conversation, and she'll cooperate with the coach and so forth. And to me, this is what coaching is all about, isn't it? When we're working with kids, we're looking to take them, and to me, it doesn't make any difference whether it's D1 or D3. There's a place for facilitating people's future. And I find that to be a very heavy weight. When I see somebody in front of me that's 10 years old and wants, I'm recognizing that I may influence what man she's going to marry in the future because of what college she's going to go to or things like that. Yeah. And that opens up another can of worms, really.
Well, that's a good point. We've got about maybe 10 minutes left. I want to talk to you about this subject. Now, I'm not sure where we'll go on it, but we've indirectly talked about really what is important is the management of these athletes. And so that comes down to, I guess, the training environment that you can build for these athletes. And now with technology, the good and the bad of it, what do you feel, or how do you feel about, the prospects of online training? But for someone like you and EJ, who can maybe do remote sorts of training via something like a Zoom with video analysis and all that sort of thing. But I actually see it as a very viable and potent resource for kids who, one, may not have access logistically to expertise, but also may not have time. And then after hearing you talk about maybe your athlete just works on pitching versus the competitive part of it, well, to me, that seems like that can provide the perfect kind of framework to have your 8-year-old take a remote instruction maybe, and you just spend time with them working on that throwing aspect, and you're taking out all the other kind of things that start to make this a competitive thing when you're in the facility and you've got other people watching and all these other things. Maybe I'm wrong, but what are your thoughts on that? The power of maybe using the internet.
I have some real strong thoughts in that area, and I've been wrestling with this whole Zoom thing here now for longer than a year plus because of COVID and stuff. Started with that a little bit back in California. But in my own work with kids in terms of Zoom, for me to work directly with an 8-year-old in Zoom, I don't think has the effectiveness as it does with, say, somebody that's 14. Mm-hmm. The dream in my heart would be that I could get parents of 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds interested enough in the development of their daughter when they're expressing an interest. I would rather put my energy into parents than I would an 8-year-old girl. Wow. And if I could shift the thinking, of parents, there's no reason why a number of, and that doesn't mean that every parent is going to do this, but to me, that if I'm talking to any parents here right now, I would say, hey, consider that. It's an opportunity for you to connect with your daughter or your son in a way that will so quickly pass. You'll when you're 45, 50 years old, you'll wonder where those years went. And it's an opportunity for you to connect with your son or daughter in a way that God has designed you to connect. Don't always be looking for the expert to take care of your daughter. You go to the expert and learn enough to at least get them started on the right foot. But what happens is parents, suddenly they realize that there's tryouts for their daughters in the local town league, and they're thrown into games in 2 weeks. Well, why don't we start thinking about this a year or two ahead of time? And there's some level of recognition in a family when you have somebody that's athletic. Let's start forming them a little bit. Let's create some curiosity. And there's nothing I would rather have than a room full of parents that are motivated because they have kids that are motivated. I just want to talk to hungry people. I want to talk to curious people. And if I can talk to enough of them, I can do it for next to nothing in the technology that we have. And I'm not, I'm not money grabbing, so to speak. And it becomes way more efficient. And I think there is a place for experts like you and me to work directly with athletes also. But I think it would make more sense for parents to be a layer in between, at least for a while, before that happens. Don't you think? What do you guys think about that?
I really like that take.
I like that.
Because on Zoom now, I'm saying to parents, look, I need you to be fully involved with this. You need to be taking notes. You need to be reinforcing what's going on here. And I don't care whether kids are 8 or 18, they need guidance in that training process. They need some kind of objective that they're going out into that backyard to work out for, to do. And I try to give them guidance. If your daughter, since I'm talking about girls most of the time, if they're getting exasperated in the backyard in terms of what you're trying to show them, don't fight with them. Go in the room and watch TV and walk out there again tomorrow and give it another shot. It doesn't have to be forced down their throat, and have a sensitivity, because the last thing we want to do as parents is exasperate our kids. And I think you guys would agree, as coaches, sometimes we allow ourselves to be exasperated.
Oh, yeah.
You talk about death walking when you allow yourself to get exasperated as a teacher, right? I mean, we've got to guard against that ourselves. And part of it is our own expectation levels, right? They might be totally out of line. And we've got to give kids a little more slack. And wouldn't you agree that's a balance? And it takes love and concern for somebody to have balance, because there is a time when you have to be tough with kids. But what's that balance? So I don't know. As crazy as this world is getting, I'm with you, EJ. I feel like there's a corner being turned, and there's a way in which there is some momentum that's starting to build in the direction of families being drawn together and kids learning to be more responsive to their parents, and parents taking more initiative with their own kids and truly being involved.
It's funny, Aaron. I always call it mentorship. You're mentoring people and trying to help them in their lives a lot of times. As coaches, that's what we do, because the sport's eventually going to end, and there needs to be mentorship to help them later. But through sport, we can help them with ideals and stuff that can grow them as people, which will ultimately help them in their sport and beyond that.
Yeah, that is so important. The concept of mentorship, discipleship, walking with rather than pointing the finger at, and that type of thing. And that's it. And let's face it, if I had it to do over again in my life, instead of waiting all of these years to try to be sensitive in these areas, if I had it to do over again, I really believe that I would have been a lot quicker to try to move in the direction of having more parental involvement in what I was doing. Because what happens with a lot of kids, they're 16, 17 years old, and even though mom or dad or both have taken them to ball games, sometimes kids or parents are so disconnected from the actual skill that the kids are trying to learn. They're strangers in their own household practically, and kids aren't as connected with them as they could have been if they would have taken a different path to get there. And I'm hoping that that's what I can do here in the closing years of my life, to scale a little bit. If I have something to say, I can scale it through other coaches and motivated parents, that type of thing. And that's how we can use the media. And I would encourage you, EJ, to keep fighting that fight. And, I'm not sure how you can do it, Aaron. I know this, you have something that's really special. I regret that more of my kids, didn't go in that direction. I think you would agree. This would be my question with you. I think you would agree that it probably doesn't make too much sense for a 10-year-old to be going into some kind of training level. And of course, you could change my mind on that. Is there any kind of age where you think that kids should kind of wait before they get into your framework of training?
Well, we're all individual specific. It's funny, we've had this conversation on some of our recent podcasts, and what we're finding is kids are coming to us younger. And I'm finding that before I wouldn't take younger kids. Now I take younger kids because they don't have the movement skills and patterns that are required to be able to play the sport. And that goes back to no PE in schools, no recess. They don't go play outside. So there's no way for them to get that repertoire of athletic movements that they're going to need for any sport, let alone softball, baseball. So now I take them because I have to. It's not to make them competitors, but it's to give them the proper movement and balance skills and coordination that they need so that even if they want to play a sport recreationally, they can do it efficiently and safely. So we've only got maybe a couple more minutes, but so I found myself having to do that. I've even batted about the concept of having just an 8 to 10-year-old class where it's almost like PE, but all the underlying games and things that we're playing build on all the rudimentary movement and athletic skills that they'll need to play a sport.
Yes.
Where we got that from just going out and riding our bikes, riding a scooter, playing three flies up, wiffle ball, flag football out in the street, hanging on monkey bars, whatever it was that we did as kids, they don't do that anymore. And so
I had somebody tell me the other day that statistically, kids are spending 7.5 hours a day on something like this.
Yeah.
On average.
Yeah.
And we wonder why they struggle running to first base.
Right. Yeah. So I have no choice. If this kid is going to have some sort of success or at least be able to enjoy the sport that they want. Yes. On the other hand, yes, there are kids who are now getting, a narrow skill set of instruction by going to hitting, pitching, those sorts of things. And that, there has to be a balance of that, I think, with play, because I still think there is some value in doing that, even from the standpoint of what you talked about. And I actually like your ideal of having some kind of parent involvement sort of class. And I've even thought of that in the past. It's like, well, hey, maybe I do a class where the parents actually have to teach the kids while I'm teaching the parents. But again, I'm one guy, only so many things I can do. But I think all of that is the answer. And even though it may be individual specific, I think that's where our future should be, because we can't wait on the schools to do it anymore. Even though they've instituted some kind of statute that now mandates recess, which I never knew recess would have disappeared in California. But obviously now they're making kids play. But again, that's 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. So we do have to figure it out. As parents, you've got to figure out, how do I put all these pieces together? Great question. I liked, again, your concept, because it's something that, has crossed my mind. I'm glad to hear it from someone like you. So it makes me feel like, okay, well, maybe this is something. But the other half of me says, well, God, these kids are young. And I'm always like, God, they're so young. Do I really want to do that?
Yeah.
But the environment kind of is, if we want to continue to help these kids so that they can learn to spin the ball and learn to hit the bat, right? Well, they've also got to learn to just, stand on one foot and hop and jump and roll and tumble. So, I think this is a great talk. I know that's our time. We got to have you back, man, because it seems like there's a whole lot more
there's much that we can talk about. Appreciate you guys having me on board. Appreciate it. Yeah. Great to meet you or see you. So EJ, did I meet you anywhere along the line in the last 30 years?
I'll tell you something really funny. Is Aaron and I have been, doing a lot of stuff before, but I'm sure our paths has crossed at Aaron's facility and stuff that years ago. But I knew of the name, and it's a high reputation, and just it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm glad you could come on today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Great to see you both. Thank you.
Sign us out, EJ.
Well, that closes our Champions Are Built edition. Thank to Rich Balswick for coming out today. And this is Coach EJ, the brand.
This is Coach Aaron, the source. Rich, if any of our listeners or followers want to get in contact with you, you got some contact information that you can give us, your phone number or website? What's the best way that they can reach you?
Well, I'm free with my phone number, 707-688, and my email address is fairly simple. Rich,
and that's BALSWICK.
Balls with one L. Yep. WICK. Fast pitch.
Perfect, and that's also your website, so that
website is Rich. The website is what? It's just Balswick W.
Great. Well, hey, Rich, we'll be talking soon. It was a pleasure catching up with you. And for everyone out there, we'll see you.